Dianna, before we get into your sparkling soccer career, I want to talk cross country because it's all part of your origin story. So I read that you kind of picked this up a little bit. You always ran, but in terms of high school, was it just your senior year that you were this runner who was taking apart other runners in New Jersey?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the sparkling or the use of the word sparkling in describing my soccer career. Most that know me would call it a dud of a career, but running was one of those things that I was always really naturally good at, and we discovered it in kindergarten. So I don't know if you had this because I'm a little older than you, but did you have the President Fitness tests where
Pacer run?
yeah. And
Yep.
so you had to do the mile, you had to do the pull-ups, the sit-ups, the stretch and the sit and reach. Remember
Yep.
those?
Oh yeah, you had to push the little
Yeah.
little lever. Yeah.
I think it was promoted from like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think he was like the spokesperson for this thing we had to do in gym class. So anyway, in kindergarten, so you're 5, you have to do the mile, which that's a lot to add. Like my son's 4. Like he runs to the car and he's out of breath. I can't imagine him in a year having to do a mile. But so I ran the mile and I ran it in 8 minutes and 16 seconds. And the gym teacher calls my parents as soon as I finished and was like, she just ran a really fast mile for a 5-year-old. And it's not that we don't trust it. We're just going to have her do it again. And we just want to get your permission to have her do it again. So the next day I went back and I ran it. And I ran it, I think, pretty much the same time. It was like close. I think even the first time it was like 8:17. So the official time was 8:16 is what they took. So they're like, okay, this person actually can run. So then when I was in first grade, I ran it in 7:52, and then second grade 7:30, and I just kept getting faster and faster. So I'm a kid. I don't know. And I have an older brother, and so he would just be like, chase me, and I would chase him, and that's like how I became a good runner, I think. So I always knew that that was like a gift, and that was something my dad said to me early on in my life. Like, God gave you this gift, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do with it. But I didn't really enjoy running. I loved playing team sports. So I played soccer, basketball, softball, you name it. And I was pretty good at all the sports I played. And my grandfather used to come to all the track meets when I was in elementary school. I always ran the mile, and in cross country, I would do the mile and a half. And he would always root for me and stand right in this one area. And I was just really close with him. And the treat I would always get after I won a race was McDonald's, which, as a kid, that's like amazing. So we had such a bond. And when he got sick, he had colon cancer when I was in 8th grade. My parents went out to dinner one night, and I stayed in the hospital with my grandpa because I didn't want to leave him alone. And when you're going through chemo, your skin gets really dry. So he still liked like when I'd like rub lotion on his hands. So I'd rub lotion on his hands, and we would talk about sports, and he really wanted me to focus on running so I could be in the Olympics one day. So he said, look, I know you don't like to run, but if you could just do 1 year in high school, if you do it for 1 year, it would mean the world to me. So fast forward, my first 3 years of high school, I played softball in the spring. And my dad's like, so remember that promise he made Grandpa? Because he had passed that when I was in 8th grade, soon after I made the promise. He's like, I think you gotta have to do this now. I'm like, I know. But I hadn't run in years. And I was good at softball, by the way. That was another thing. I was like, well, I can't walk away from being like an all-league player at third base to just joining a track team. So I talked to the track coach, and he's like, look, just come out, run one practice with us. Let's just see where you land. Well, I beat everybody, including the boys. So he's like, you got to run track for us. Like, we need you. We're really good. We just could use another runner in the mid and distance runner. So they made me an 800-mile and 2-mile runner. And the first event out, I beat the county champ. And it was such a cool feeling I just didn't know. They were just like, run as hard as you can. And I did. And so then I realized I was like, okay, I'm good at this. I have to try at soccer. I don't have to try in track. I just go until I feel sick. So I had all these great opportunities to run in college. And I would say soccer was my worst sport between that and basketball. but I decided I wanted to do soccer because I loved it the most. So I walked on at George Mason.
I did find from May 2001 that a story that you swept the 800, 1600, and 3200 races, being a different runner each time, and you had to convince your coaches to let you run the 3200.
Okay, so anyone that's a runner knows that like you run the 2 mile, it's never ending. Like I hated it, but I knew that they needed someone to get us points, and I was like, I'll just do it to get the points. So I was definitely open to helping, but I hated it. But that was another event where I was really surprised how fast I was running it. Because once you run with competition and someone's on your heels, you go. Like you can go as it pushes you. And I even remember the county championship, which was such a big thing. Even like socially, like all the cool kids came to the event. And I remember being like, I gotta win this. There was like a guy I liked that was in the stands. And it's actually, I ran this event at the high school my kids will now go to, which is so crazy. How many times do you think I'll tell them this story? Probably 5 million. And it was a hot Friday night, and I was running up against the former county champ. She'd won it 3 years in a row, and I remember seeing her physically, and I remember her name, Clara Nowakowski. She's tall and beautiful, and she had like the coolest gear. I was wearing the cheapest shoes in the world. My parents just didn't care that much. They're like, whatever, you're good. Like, you don't need all that. But she trained. Like, she like had like a coach, and I had a coach, but not at the level she had, because she was going to go run in college. And she had the inside lane. And I just remember just elbowing, which you're not supposed to hit people in track. But I think I hit her, which was kind of cheap. And I just remember my mom and dad at the last bend of the last lap. It was the last 200 meters, just screaming, give it everything you have for Grandpa. And I ran all the way, and then I won it, and it's still probably, which is so sad to think my senior year of high school is a peak of my life, but it's certainly one of the best moments I've ever had.
Well, one of the stories I read talk about your basketball playing, and I'm going to read this one sentence because I think it kind of describes you a little bit as a reporter. This was a game you guys won 47-25 over Ridgewood, and it writes, the game was barely 3 minutes old when Old Tappan's, am I pronouncing that right? Old Tappan, New Jersey. Old Tappan's Dianna Russini ran into a table going after a loose ball. Moments later, she made a full-out dive to knock a pass away from her Ridgewood opponent. I mean, that's how you are as a reporter too, right?
Oh my gosh, so I'm still really close with that basketball coach. His name's Brian Dunn. He's the head football coach and girls basketball coach. And he always told me that, yes, he coaches football, but we were tougher than the boys in terms of mental toughness and preparation and discipline for what we were doing. He actually had me go talk to his players once I graduated about how to stay disciplined and focused during the season. And he loved mixing it up and coaching boys and girls to kind of get the mix. But yeah, I wasn't a skilled player. I wasn't that talented naturally at basketball. I'm only 5'6", so I wasn't tall. But I was gutsy and relentless and ruthless at times. And I remember being at the county championship game, actually, and the place was packed, and I'm diving all over. My knees were all banged up. And some mom got up and screamed, "Put number 10 in the penalty box. She's playing hockey out here." And my mom stood up and goes, "I agree." My parents used to hate how physical I was, because they're like, you're a woman, like you're gonna feel this later in life. You're not gonna want all these bumps and bruises. And I got to tell you, at my age now, I feel it now. But yeah, I think I always just have a survival skill, and no matter what I do, just figure out a way to win. Just figure it out.
So you're playing all these sports, and you play soccer at George Mason. When did, hey, I could have a career in sports first pop in your mind? We'll get into the news. Obviously, you started on the news track when you got into media, but like when did all of that kind of career stuff start bubbling up that you could see a track for yourself that way?
Yeah, so I walked on at George Mason, so I did not belong there. I should not have been on the team. My coach has told me a million times there's no chance he would have ever recruited me. He didn't. And it was essentially, the more I was told no, the more I wanted it. And I had been an athlete in high school and had so much success that for me it was scary to think of my life without a sport. So when they told me that I wasn't good enough, I was too skinny, I wasn't skilled enough, I begged them to keep me on the team and that I would gain weight and muscle and I would impress them and they would figure out a way to find a place for me on the team. And somehow I convinced them. But my freshman year was when this was all happening and the writing was on the wall that I wasn't going to make it. But 9/11 happened and my dad was in Terror One and he survived, thank God. And my family just went through a really hard fall that year. My father lost a lot of friends. We lost a lot of people we knew. And I think my coach had sympathy for that and knew that cutting me during the season while my family was going through something as horrific and catastrophic as 9/11 would probably be unfair and heartless. So he gave me to the end of the year and then called me in and was like, we're going to cut you. And that's where I really convinced them to give me the spring. And that spring season, I was our lead scorer and they voted me captain and I got a full ride out of it. Just from putting in the time. I cut class. I did everything. So that year became the most important year of my life because that is when I realized through 9/11 that I wanted to be the messenger. Because all we did when I got back to New Jersey, my dad picked me up on September 12th morning. That's how scared he was for me as well. He wanted his family home with him. He drove to Virginia with my parents, got us, which is like a 5.5 hour ride from New Jersey. They got a sip of coffee and got back in the car and drove back to New Jersey. And I just remember looking at the skyline like I've never seen it before. And we just watched the news every day. And we watched Channel 7 Eyewitness News and watched Nina Pineda and Jeff Rossin. I can still name these people because Sarah Wallace, like everything they said, we were hanging on their words. And I just remember thinking the power they had and also how comforting they were because it was like faces we knew that were out there telling us what was happening. So that summer, I applied to the internship at Eyewitness News. And they were like, yeah, no, you're too young. Call us next year. So the following year, I had a friend in town who happened to date somebody that worked at ABC News, not on the local level, but the national. And I was like, hey, I'll put in a good word for you. And I was able to get this internship at ABC News with Diane Sawyer, which was ridiculous and unbelievable. And I got to be around her and watch her. And I spent more time with her producers than I did with her. And I just fell in love with news. I was like, this is what I want to do. But I knew I didn't want to do it on the national level. Diane was so polished and she had seen it all. I loved the grind of local. And the ABC News building is right next door to the WABC local news building. And during my lunch break, I would run over because my pass would work in the local building because it was all one family. And I would just walk around the newsroom like a weirdo just to like see all the reporters, all the ones I had watched on 9/11. And I became friends with some of them just through talking to them and the camera people. And the camera people are probably the reason why I was able to actually even get a career because they would spend their break time or their days off helping me learn how to be on camera. So really, I got lucky that I met the right people. And from my ABC News internship, Eyewitness News then eventually allowed me to intern the following summer. And that is when I fell in love with it. There was no turning back. I was meant to do this. My parents tell me stories of when I was a kid that I used to take a coloring book and anytime I'd hear a fire engine, I'd run outside and I would like draw all the pictures and then stand in front of them with my hairbrush and tell them everything that happened. So I always had something in me where I like to tell the story.
When you had that internship, when you finally got it, WABC, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your roles and your responsibilities? What were you doing day to day?
It was everything. They had me log tape. That was always that was like your first big job as an intern. You were responsible for logging tape. They put me in the investigative unit initially, which was heavy for my experience at the time. But I learned a lot, and I learned how to dig. I learned about public records. I learned how to make phone calls. And you know how you are as a kid. I'm 20 years old. I'm shy, but I'm confident, but I'm shy a little bit. I'm outgoing, but to call up precincts and try to get public records, like I just learned how to be comfortable just talking to people over the phone. I used to have to carry the camera guy's tripod That was always in, especially New York City. Like that, you don't take that lightly. Um, it was your job to bring coffee every morning to the crew. I sat in the news vans for hours helping them just edit and just basically anything they needed, I was there to do. And, I'm a daughter of a plumber and a nurse, and they both trained me pretty early on. Like, you are so fortunate to get this opportunity to be around people that know what they're doing. You keep your mouth shut and you just do what you're asked and do more. And so I never took a day off when I was an intern. And you know how it is when you're that age, 20, you're running around with your friend. I missed like anything you see from the Jersey Shore. That is what my friends were doing. And I missed that because I knew I wanted to do this. And I look back on it now, I'm like, did I do the right thing? Like I did. And I still see, by the way, I still see those reporters because they're still at Channel 7. And I run into them in town, and I've seen them at Giants and Jets sometimes when they have assignments, and I thank them. I thank them because they taught me how to do it because they were doing it at the highest level. And I bring it to my game every day.
Is your first job News 12 Hudson Valley, correct?
Yes.
How did you get that job?
Because I auditioned for News 12 The Bronx initially. Okay. News 12 The Bronx is the mecca. If you want to be on TV, you work at News 12 The Bronx, which doesn't sound very dreamy, right? Because you think of anything from the Bronx isn't that great. Cardi B, J-Lo, I mean, they turned out great. But in terms of having to do the grind of this is where you go. And you go in the bad neighborhoods and you carry your own camera. And what they do is they audition you for 2 weeks. And I had everyone I knew call to help me get the job. I got the audition, but to get the job, you have to pass their tests. And I had people from Channel 7 call. I had people from NBC who I knew call. And I didn't get it. And they told me over the phone that the reason why I didn't get it was they wanted to show the rest of the newsroom that it's not about who you know, it's about the skill set you have. And they didn't think that my edit skills were that good at the time, like physically editing tape, because it was a one-man band shop. Devastated, cried my eyes out. At that point in my life, I had never like really, really failed. And I thought my career was never going to be anything, because if you didn't get a job at News 12 The Bronx. And so I got a waitressing job, and my parents were like, you need to figure this out. Like, what are you doing with yourself? If you're not going to be a news reporter, you better, go into sales, find something else, be a coach. And while I was waiting a table, there was a camera person that worked at News 12 Hudson Valley, and he had a Hudson Valley jacket on. And I said, do you work at News 12 Hudson Valley? He said, I do. I said, I would love to work there. And I told him everything. He's like, well, why don't you send me your resume? And I did. And he sent it to his boss. And a week later, I got a call. And I was never a waitress again, thank God, because I was awful at it. And I got in, and they basically were like, look, we don't know what you can do, but we're willing to give you a shot. And the first story they had me report on was a car accident on a highway. And they said, okay, stand in front of the camera. We're going live to you in 15 seconds. Just talk. And I didn't know. I mean, what do you say? I'm like, oh, there's a car right behind you. And I just kept going. And they're like, rap, finish, toss it back. I didn't know any of this. But I passed, and they believed in me, and I got really lucky. And then I realized that in order for me to be good at this, I better make contacts with the police officers and the firefighters and find ways to get stories, because those were the good reporters, not the ones that just showed up to the accident, the ones who knew everybody. And so that's pretty much what I did my first year being on TV, was not so much working on my appearance and my performance, because it was not good, even though I needed to work on it. I was like, I got to figure out how to do this job. And that's what I did.
You won an award for a feature on a SWAT team, where you went through the SWAT team test. How did that pop in your mind, and what was it like?
I think I still had the college athlete in me when I was a news reporter, and the competitiveness. And so when I got the job in Hudson Valley, they sent me to the furthest county in New York for the coverage, and was like, nobody wants the job. Do you want this? I think I made $27,000 that year. And I took the job, and I commuted from my parents' house, where I was still living, an hour and a half each way. And the stories were ridiculous up there, and I say up there because it's still north of where I live. They just were different. They weren't the city stories I was used to, even the suburban type stories. It was a lot of farm up there. So I had to learn that culture, but they also had tons and tons of services up there. West Point was near it. So, the SWAT teams, they had tons of training facilities. So one day I was watching them and I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. Like if I could ever pass a test like that. How hard could it be? Because these guys didn't look very fit to me. Well, I did it. And it was hard. And I passed, but it was hard. And so they just mic'd me up, and I had a photographer, Steve Leary, who just loved to just get in the action with me. He had guts. And so we did that. And then I started to meet people. And then we started to break stories. And that's when things changed for me. Because what happens when you break news, when you live outside a big city, the big cities then have to travel to those towns where these stories are happening, especially if they're salacious. Like one of the biggest stories that broke was a mayor in a town woke up one morning with a horse head in his bed. A horse head, like a mob movie. And it was crazy. And I got tipped off on it through a friend of mine. And so the New York City networks like Channel 7, Eyewitness News would call me and be like, what is happening up there in Orange County, New York? I'm like, it's crazy. There's so many stories. They're so different and weird and bizarre. And so from there, I started to get attention of the New York market, which was wild at 22 years old.
Going through your bio, and we can talk about some of the other things before we get to Seattle, as you're staying in the East Coast. One of the stories that popped up for you, Dianna, was that your contract at Channel 4 WNBC was not renewed. And, in our industry, we go through contracts not getting renewed. You go through layoffs. Like, I had a boss years ago be like, "Oh, this is how you know you're in journalism when something like this happens." I didn't love to hear that because I want to be like, or you could just not. What was that experience like in terms of how it kind of shaped you moving forward?
So 2 years after I don't get that News 12 job, which I'm crying in my backyard thinking my life is over, WNBC, the competitor actually to Channel 7, Eyewitness News, which is still to this day something funny we all joke about when I see these guys of how they were my family. They taught me how to be a reporter, and I turned on them and took the job because they both offered me. But I took the job at WNBC. So I'm working at the biggest market in the world at 23, 24 years old. Dream job. This is all I wanted to do. My family gets to see me on the news every night. I get to be part of it all. I'm comfortable. I know the city well. And I had a really hard year. I wasn't ready in life. As a woman, as an adult, I was not ready for the stories that I was being asked to cover. I didn't have that skill set yet. And so I was behind. I could get by because I figured it out as I went. And by the time I figured it out, it was too late. And so what happened was the guy that hired me got fired during my contract. And so the person that came in calls me into the office, and she was as straight as it comes. She's like, I look at my roster and I go, I'm cutting from the top, I'm cutting from the bottom, and you're on the bottom, and you're really young. You're going to be just fine. I know it probably hurts right now, but you'll get a job. You'll see and thank me one day. And I left her office. I remember Katy Perry was playing on the Today Show outside, Hot and You're Cold. I remember that song. And I just walked through that whole concert bawling, calling my parents. I just got fired. Like, what am I going to do now? And the local sports anchor at WNBC, his name's Bruce Beck. And if you're in New York, everyone knows Bruce Beck. He's the best. They call him Bubba. He's just a New York icon. He used to tell me when I was a news reporter, why are you not a sports reporter? Every time you finish up your shift, you're sitting back here watching the Yankees with us. You're always back. You know more sports than our guys. Like, why are you not doing this? And you're more yourself. You're more comfortable than you're doing this than news. Covering the Pope's visit was hard for me. That's not something I would be interested in naturally. Sports is like my life. That was everything I knew. So I said, what do you think I do now? Like, do you think I should try the sports thing? He's like, here's my advice. Everyone knows you as like a New Yorker. Leave New York, go take a sports gig somewhere, and then just come back. Like, go learn it, and you'll figure it out. So I took a job in Seattle. I had never left. Like, D.C., Virginia was the furthest I'd ever been anywhere. I hadn't gone west ever. And I picked the furthest west I could go from my house. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I was horrible, and I was really, really bad at it. And they put me on the radio, and they put me on pregame shows. And they hired me because I had experience in a big market, and I was willing to do whatever. That's what they told me later. And they were also happy that I was willing to take no money, pretty much. I mean, they paid me, but wasn't much. I think I'm still paying off that credit card bill. And I just discovered pretty quickly that if you want to be in sports, you better know what the heck you're talking about. And I had good people around me help me. But I realized I needed to figure this thing out because I was going to get killed in Seattle. And so I was there for about a year and a half. And then I decided I want to go back east. And I took a sports gig at NBC Connecticut. And the news director there said to me, I don't think you're very good at sports. In fact, I think you're bad at sports. I'll make a deal with you. If you give me 3 days a week as a news reporter, I'll make you my lead reporter on the 4, 5, and 6, and I'll give you weekend sports. But that's it. And I don't want to hear anything else. I took the job on the spot. I'm like, I'll take it. Like, it's fine. I'll do it. So I went back. So I was a hybrid reporter. So I did news during the week, and I just practiced anchoring sports on the weekends. And I covered the Yukon women and the Yankees and the Mets and some Red Sox, some Patriots, some Giants, some Jets, but not at the level that I would eventually. And then when I was a news reporter there, I covered Sandy Hook Elementary. I covered the Boston Marathon bombing. It was the darkest cloud of a year of my life, but probably the most important year for me in terms of a journalist.
Your welcome to the big leagues moment. I mean, you probably have a lot you can think of. And I wonder maybe if we stick to sports, like if you want to pick like a sports moment where it was, oh, this is how athletes or coaches or GMs handle it, when you started to report and started to go into locker rooms. Can you think of one that comes to mind?
Yeah, So after I worked at NBC Connecticut, I transferred to NBC Washington because they needed a anchor there. So I went there, and I did not know, despite the fact that I went to school in Virginia, I did not understand at the time, the Washington Redskin fan base. I did not get that Washington's football there was a religion. And when I was on the air down there, within a week of just being an anchor, people hated me. Because they loved Lindsay Zarniak, who I had replaced, but I attacked it a little bit more critically, whereas they were used to like local reporters being like, all right, all hail, HTTR, go Dan Snyder, go Robert Griffin III, and I attacked it like, this team needs to get better. Like, what are I just approached it differently. And so my moment of this is a big league was when I realized that they may not like you for your criticism and your honest reporting, they respect you. And I had a colleague, his name was Jim Vance, who's now passed, who had been there for over 40 years as the main anchor. He would put his hand on my hand during commercial break, right before sports would start. And he would always just say the same thing to me. Just give me the news. And meaning, don't worry that what you're saying is going to upset the football fan. Like, you're doing what we want. And believe it or not, as I continued doing broadcasts with him, some people would see it right before the camera. Like, he would do it during commercial and always take it off right before they introduced me. Some people would see it, and they always thought that was him calming my nerves. And then it made them like me, I think, because they were like, oh, she's nervous. I was never nervous. I knew I was doing something that not a lot of the local people were doing. And, from Washington, I got my gig at ESPN, and then the big boys come for you. Then it's a new ball game because you're covering it on a national level and you're breaking news, and not everybody likes when their secrets are out.
I always kind of start to wrap up with asking about the through line from the beginning of someone's career to where you're at now. And I have two for you, Dianna, because the first one is the breaking news element, which obviously you do an amazing job for us and at The Athletic. And when you were talking about making those connections with police and fire and city hall, do you kind of connect that a little bit to what you have to do now, like learning that in your early 20s to what you have to do now to break news in the NFL? Is that kind of that through line? Like, when you think about your day to day in terms of breaking news, what's the connection there from the beginning of your career?
I think I got over the fear of just cold calling people and just introducing myself and finding ways to connect with people as fast as I could. I think that is, like, if you were to ask me what has helped me in my career, I would say I'm decent at meeting somebody and within 5 minutes feeling like the conversation's at a comfortable space. They may not tell me everything initially, of course not, but I like to think through a quick chat, I can get people to get that I'm a good person. and I, as simple as it sounds, I do think that idea of having a good soul and being a good character carries you. And police officers and firefighters and all the people I met early in my career, some helped me because they saw me trying. I got a lot of that in football too. Whereas, like, D'Angelo Hall said that to me once. He's like, I used to give you stories because I'd feel bad for you. Like, you were trying so hard. It was like hard to watch. So I think just really being comfortable with myself and always being honest with what I was doing helped me. And I apply my aggressiveness and relationships that I learned through news, knowing how important those are, and immediately use that in football, and it separated me from a lot of people doing it, and that certainly benefited me.
The second part of that through line is, you talked about September 11th, and just, I mean, for that to kind of spark this career, and obviously, I always tell people, like, we talk football, we talk about a kid's game. That's our lives. That's what we get to do. It's fun. There's some things that are serious, but obviously it's never on that level. But how often do you think back to what drew you to it, and to see where you're at now, and how, and like, again, but people are so passionate. They hang on the things that we say and that we write, and it's different than news, but I still think it matters so much, and that. How much do you kind of think back to kind of how this all began for you?
I think my own style is actually based off my experiences covering hard news. I think because I was one of the first reporters in Newtown, Connecticut on the morning of the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting, and what I saw and what I covered, and I know in my heart I will never, ever, ever again cover anything like that. Especially now that I'm a mother, I reflect more on Sandy Hook now than I ever have. Just not really understanding it at the time. And as years go by, and you're just like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that happened. And I was on television for 10 days straight without a shower, just talking about this awful, awful thing. I think it helps me understand how wonderful sports are. And while breaking news and doing deep dives on organizations that affect players and their families can be heavy at times, nothing will be Sandy Hook to me. Nothing will be 9/11. So I think it has helped me enjoy this job more. And it also gives me I feel lucky I get to do this. Even though, like, if you read into the Twitter and the crazy fans, like, that stuff, that's just part of the pageantry of it all. I don't let that bother me. To me, it's just more, I get to cover a sport, and it's what I was meant to do. I do not know what I would do if I wasn't a sports reporter.
What's your advice to those who are trying to break in?
Don't be scared. Like, be uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable. Like, I think sometimes people see the polished versions of us, and they read you, and they see me on TV, or they read some of the stuff, and they think, like, I just have this gift. I had no talent at this. I learned. I asked a lot of questions. I had a general manager say to me recently, actually. He's like, I remember when I first met you, you asked me more questions that were so bad. And I remember thinking, how did this girl have the job? He's like, but I respected that you didn't care. Like, I don't care. I think if you can, like, not worry about people's opinions of you, most will just respect that you're trying. Because so many people don't. They want it just handed to them. So put yourself out there. When you're if you get an opportunity to be in a locker room, in a clubhouse, and the player's there, and you want to go up to them, but it's weird, just do it. You'd be surprised how many will just appreciate it. And once you just break that seal, you're in, and it'll change your life.
Last one, NFL season. We're recording this in July, 2025 NFL season. Give me one storyline that you're looking forward to kind of following this season?
Well, I'm going to guess that Bears fans are going to be following this because they know you. So I should play into the
Yeah.
crowd here. And
Are the Bears back, Dianna?
Are the Bears? I'm not doing the insider thing to just do it, but I did have a conversation with the head coach this morning in the AFC, so don't get excited.
Okay.
And I said, if you were to compare like the Bears and the Lions now, how would you see them? And this person's like, I'm actually, you know what I'm interested in? He's like, yeah, the Caleb, the quirkiness, and all the stuff that it comes with, but just the run game difference is going to be a problem. I don't think it's going to be as fluid as we saw in Detroit in this first year. So I'm going to be paying attention to that, of just how Ben Johnson's offense. I thought he made a really good point of just how the offense is going to translate in Chicago. It's different. They did a great job in the offseason of trying to emulate it, but can it work? But I'd say outside of that, I want to see the Chiefs bounce. I want to see we've seen them do this before after Tampa Bay when they lost. But even just like Patrick Mahomes cutting his hair to me. Like, I love this. I like petty. I like these little things, these little signs of things like we are so going to come and slash throats this year. So I want to see how the Chiefs rebound. I want to see how the Eagles deal with winning success. It's like a martini or relaxes you, they say. I'm curious to see how many martinis this team had. And Denver Broncos, I have them high on my list of a team that I think are going to break out. So I got a lot. It's the best time of year, right? Because right now everyone is so optimistic, all the good stuff.
It is. As I said, we're recording this at the beginning of training camp. So, if you listen to this and we're early in the season, we'll see who's still optimistic. Dianna Russini, you can read her at The Athletic. You can watch her and hear her on Scoop City. Dianna, as I tell you, it's an honor to be your colleague. And I think what people don't realize is, yes, it's great to say, hey, she's breaking news and she's on my team, but you're also a fabulous teammate in terms of lifting all of us and helping all of us. And it was fun to get to hear your origin story.
Thank you so much. This is great. I think there's one more takeaway. There is no one way to get there. There's no blueprint to what we do. We all find our ways, and you fail a lot, but you'll get there. So thank you so much for having me on the show.